The Trump administration took a big step today toward fulfilling a central campaign promise by endorsing an immigration reform bill crafted by Senators Tom Cotton and David Perdue. The bill would sharply restrict immigration based simply on family reunification and instead give priority to immigrants who have skills, who speak English, who might help the country. It would also cut future legal immigration by 50%, bringing the number closer to historic levels. It would also abolish something called the diversity lottery. Oh, the White House press corps hated it. Polling shows the public liked it. The White House rolled it out today in the briefing room, and there was quite an exchange. Watch this interchange between Stephen Miller, the White House top policy advisor, and Jim Acosta of CNN, who started off by implying this bill somehow, for reasons he didn't quite explain, must be racist. Watch.
This whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course there are people who come.
But that's not what you said, and it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to say,
it sounds like you're trying to engineer the racial and ethnic flow of people into this country.
Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said.
Ouch. Well, apparently undeterred, Jim Acosta rooted through his bag of cliches and came up with, presto, the old Statue of Liberty trick. What do you think of that, Stephen Miller?
The Statue of Liberty has always
Jim,
been
let me ask you a question.
Of hope to the world,
Jim,
for people to send
do you believe,
people to this country,
Jim,
and they're not always going to speak English, Stephen.
Jim,
they're not
do you
always
believe,
going to be highly skilled. They're not always going to be.
Jim, I appreciate your speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech. So let's talk about this.
It was a modest.
Jim, let's talk about this. In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? Tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land. So you're saying 1 million a year is the Statue of Liberty number. 900,000 violates it, 800,000 violates it.
Well, you won't be surprised to learn that Acosta did not have a specific number in mind, actually even a general number to within, say, several hundred thousand. He had no idea at all, none, and yet he kept talking, which turned out to be a mistake.
We've had periods of very large waves, followed by periods of less immigration and more immigration. And during we've had
a period of immigration right now. The president wants to build. It's actually about a sweeping change.
Surely, Jim, you don't actually think that a wall affects green card policy. You couldn't possibly believe that, do you? Actually, the notion that you actually think immigration is at a historic law. The foreign-born population in the United States today,
with the
Jim,
new chief of staff on Monday talking about how border crossings.
Do you really? I want to be serious, Jim. Do you really at CNN not know the difference between green card policy and illegal immigration?
We can answer that question. No, they don't know the difference. Jim Acosta and the network he works for don't know much at all about this subject. They don't know how many immigrants come here every year or how. They don't have any clue as to how many should come, ideally. They know very little about the economic effect those immigrants have on Americans who already live here because they don't care enough to find out. They're utterly ignorant on the subject of immigration, and yet, and here's the amazing part, they are still filled with absolute moral certainty and boundless self-righteousness. They are buffoons, in other words, the drunk guy at the party with bad breath who won't stop talking. Wow, is that embarrassing. Joining us now, a noted connoisseur of awkward moments, author and columnist Mark Steyn. Did you see this exchange today, Mark?
Yes, I did. And first of all, I don't understand why Jim Acosta is allowed to hijack a White House press conference for this kind of showboating. You know, one of the reasons why we need immigrants to come here and do the jobs that Americans won't do is because apparently one of the jobs that Americans won't do is drag Jim Acosta out of there, kick him to the sidewalk and say, if you want to do the Jim Acosta show, there's a rusting boxcar around the back of the freight yards with 3 semi-comatose hobos who are interested in it, but nobody else here is. And that would have been the healthy reaction to that. As for the range of cliches he brought up, the French gave the Americans a pretty good Statue of Liberty, and then the Americans hammered a lousy poem by Emma Lazarus onto it and turned a pretty great Statue of Liberty into a statue of immigration. I regret that. But the fact is that Stephen Miller was quite right at this point about, do you only want Englishmen and Australians? There are 60 countries in the world, including mine, that have English as an official language. For example, just a few years ago, after the genocide, Rwanda, a Belgian colony, joined the British Commonwealth. And as part of it, even though it's never been a British colony, and as part of that, they stopped teaching French in schools and began teaching English. So you can have Rwandans who are fluent in English. You can have Papua New Guineans who are fluent in English. You can have Tuvaluans who are fluent in English, and Singaporeans who are fluent in English. And the idea that this is just some pasty white man's language is so deranged. Almost a third of the members of the United Nations are proficient in English, more or less.
Jim ACOSTA thinks English is a race.
Yes.
Which is troubling.
Yes, he does. Oh, by the way, Tucker, there's plenty of people in the United Kingdom who speak Welsh and Gaelic. I was driving through the Highlands, Scottish Highlands, with my daughter, and we heard the BBC's Gaelic rap station in which these delinquent Scotsmen are rapping in Gaelic. So I protest on behalf of the non-English speakers of the British Isles of this outrageous racism from this ACOSTA buffoon.
If I can improve on that. I do think, though, on some level, liberals, Jim ACOSTA, the network he works for, all of Washington, are offended by the idea that America would craft an immigration policy that helps America. Why is that so offensive to them?
Yes, basically until half a century ago, it was thought perfectly normal for countries to decide the immigrants that were of most use to them, which tended to be the immigrants who could assimilate the easiest. And suddenly it's become a point where there's 7 billion people on the planet, and you're not allowed to make value judgments about any of them. And in the case of the United States, we have wound up with the most extreme immigration policy of all, where we actually advantage unskilled illegal immigrants who don't even have the couple of $100 for the paperwork. I mean, don't forget, what Jim ACOSTA is complaining about is that Trump wants to move to a Canadian-style immigration policy. These are the same people who are wetting their knickers over Justin Trudeau on the cover of Rolling Stone saying, oh, why can't we have a dreamboat president like the Canadian Prime Minister? And Trump saying, well, I'll meet you halfway. Let's start with Canadian immigration policy. And suddenly Justin Trudeau is this white supremacist, and Trump is trashing America's immigration policy to turn himself into another maple-infused Ku Klux Klan moose hunting ground like Canada. This is ridiculous.
The best thing about this debate, though, is you really do get to learn how much the ruling class hates itself and hates this country. This will continue. Right. Mark, thank you for you just put that all in perspective, as usual.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.